Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. In this lecture, we are going to discuss another very important topic in hematology unit, that is Hodgkin's lymphoma. You can download the PDF of this lecture from Medilectures app, which is available on Play Store as well as iOS. You can also check out free tests and various quizzes. You can also check out Internal Medicine Revision Series course with schedule based revision of all systems on WhatsApp group. Also, it has more than 3000 MCQs with detailed explanations from the textbook. So in this lecture, we'll first see the intro part. What is Hodgkin's lymphoma? Its epidemiology and etiology. How will we approach to a patient? What are the symptoms by which these patients present? What all points should be considered while history taking and physical examination? What all investigations are to be ordered? And then how is this tumor staged? Finally, we will discuss the treatment part. First, we will discuss early stage disease, then treatment of advanced stage disease, what if the disease has relapsed, and survivorship in this tumor. Finally, we'll have a brief discussion on nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma. Before starting the in-depth discussion on Hodgkin's lymphoma, let's first see the relative frequency of various lymphoid malignancies. So the most common lymphoid malignancy includes non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is responsible for about 62.4% of the cases. Among this, the most common subtype is diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, followed by follicular lymphoma, which is the second most common subtype of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Other subtypes include mild lymphoma, mature T-cell lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma, etc. Now, this non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is followed by plasma cell disorder, which is responsible for 16% of all lymphoid malignancies, and these include disorders like multiple myeloma, Waldenstrom, macroglobulinemia, solitary plasmacytoma, etc. Then we have chronic lymphocytic leukemia, which is usually seen in adults. It is the lymphoid malignancy of adults. Then we have Hodgkin's lymphoma, which we will discuss in detail in this lecture. And finally, a rare tumor which is seen in children, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So friends, Hodgkin's lymphoma is a malignancy of mature B lymphocytes, and it represents approximately 10% of lymphomas which are diagnosed each year. Now, when we consider the subtypes, the majority of Hodgkin lymphoma diagnoses are classical Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is responsible for more than 95% of the cases. But there is a second subtype of Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is known as nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin lymphoma, NLPHL. While this diagnosis resembles classical Hodgkin's lymphoma morphologically in some respects, there is some evidence that it is more related to indolent B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma biologically. Now we will be focusing entirely on discussion of classical Hodgkin lymphoma, and we'll discuss in brief about nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin lymphoma at the end of this presentation. So classical Hodgkin lymphoma is one of the success stories of modern oncology. Why? Because cure rates are now more than 80%. So the new challenge in the treatment of Hodgkin lymphoma is late therapy related toxicity, which includes high rate of secondary malignancy and cardiovascular disease. So the current clinical trials are aimed at minimizing this risk while preserving the efficacy of treatment. When we consider the epidemiology and etiology, it is more common in whites as compared to blacks and more commonly seen in males. It has a bimodal distribution of age at diagnosis, with one peak incidence occurring in patients who are in their 20s and second peak occur in patients who are in their 80s of their age. Now, WHO classification of Hodgkin's lymphoma divides it into two types, as we have already discussed. Less than 5% of the cases are due to nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma, and more than 95% of the cases are due to classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, there are four distinct subtypes in classical Hodgkin's lymphoma that are differentiated based on their histopathologic features. So based on their histopathologic features, there are 4 subtypes of classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are nodular sclerosis, mixed cellularity type, lymphocyte depleted, and lymphocyte rich subtype. So nodular sclerosis type is commonly seen in developed countries and young individuals. On the other hand, mixed cellularity and lymphocyte depleted types are commonly seen in developing countries, elderly age group, and HIV infected individuals. Now, among these, the most common subtypes are nodular sclerosis and mixed cellularity type, which are itself responsible for more than 95% of all the classical Hodgkin lymphoma cases. Now, viral risk factors of this lymphoid malignancy includes human immunodeficiency virus and Epstein-Barr virus. But viral oncogenesis appears to play a greater role in HIV as compared to Epstein-Barr virus in the pathogenesis of this tumor. Because Epstein-Barr virus can be detected in all cases of HIV associated classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. On the other hand, Epstein-Barr virus positivity is seen only in 1/3 of the cases of non-HIV associated classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it will be present along with all the HIV associated Hodgkin's lymphoma, but only in 1/3 of the cases of non-HIV associated classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. The pathological hallmark of this malignancy is Reed-Steinberg cells. Now let's discuss briefly about Reed-Steinberg cells. So histologically, these Reed-Steinberg cells are diagnostic of Hodgkin's lymphoma. These are the malignant cells in the Hodgkin's lymphoma. When we consider the morphology, these are large cells with abundant cytoplasm, have bilobe and or multiple nuclei. On immunohistochemistry, these are often PAX5 positive but have low or no expression of other B cell antigens like CD19 and CD20. On the other hand, these express CD15 in 85% of the cases and CD30 is positive in all the cases, that is 100% of the cases. These cells though comprise only less than 1% of the tumor cellularity. So what are the other cells which make up the tumor? So the majority of tumor is made up of surrounding inflammatory infiltrate of polyclonal lymphocytes, eosinophils, neutrophils, macrophages, plasma cells, and finally fibroblasts and collagen. So almost all the types of immune cells are present in the tumor mass of this Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now these Reed-Steinberg cells interact with its microenvironment via cell-to-cell contact and elaboration of growth factors and cytokines, which results in a surrounding cellular milieu that protects it from the host immune attack. Now let's see how these Reed-Steinberg cells avoid immune destruction and make friendship with the other immune cells which are present in the tumor mass. So 97% of these Reed-Steinberg cells which are present in classical Hodgkin lymphoma harbor genetic aberrations in PD-L1 locus on chromosome 9p24.1. Now this results in overexpression of PD-L1. So what is this PD-L1? It is just a ligand for PD-1 receptor which are present on immune cells. So this PD-1 receptor is an inhibitory type of receptor which decreases the activity of immune cells. So this leads to generalized immune suppression, and this is one mechanism by which these Reed-Steinberg cells avoid the immune destruction by host immune cells. Now let's come on to the approach to the patient. So what is the most common presentation? So the most common symptom or sign by which the patient presents is non-tender palpable lymphadenopathy. In most patients, these lymph nodes are in neck, supraclavicular area or axillary region. Now more than 50% of the patients will have mediastinal lymphadenopathy at the time of diagnosis, and this is sometimes the initial manifestation. Subdiaphragmatic presentation of classical Hodgkin's lymphoma is very unusual, and it is more common in older males as compared to young individuals. It is more common in older males. Now, 1/3 of the patients will present with fever, night sweats, weight loss, which are termed as B symptoms. These are termed as B symptoms. Now, occasionally, Hodgkin's lymphoma can present as fever of unknown origin, and this is more common again in older patients who are found to have mixed cellularity variant of classical Hodgkin's lymphoma in an abdominal site. So this is an unusual site which can lead to presentation with fever of unknown origin. Now, what is Pell-Epstein fever? Now, rarely the fever of Hodgkin's lymphoma can persist for days to weeks, and this is followed by a afebrile interval and again recurrence of fever. So this pattern of fever, which is characterized by fever of days to weeks, then there is afebrile period, then again fever of days to weeks. This is termed as Pell-Epstein pattern of fever. Pell-Epstein pattern of fever. Now, Hodgkin's lymphoma can occasionally present with unusual manifestations like severe or unexplained itching, certain cutaneous disorders like erythema nodosum or ichthyosiform atrophy. There can be paraneoplastic cerebellar degeneration and other distant effects on the central nervous system. Patient can present with nephrotic syndrome, immune hemolytic anemia or thrombocytopenia, hypercalcemia, and finally there can be pain in these non-tender lymph nodes on alcohol ingestion. So these are some of the unusual manifestations of this disease. Now, after we have seen the presentation of this disease, now let's see after we have seen the presentation of this disease, the evaluation of patients with Hodgkin lymphoma will typically begin with a careful history and physical examination. The patients should be asked about the presence or absence of B symptoms. Comorbidities that may impact therapy should be reviewed carefully, like pulmonary disease or presence of congestive heart failure, as use of chemotherapy drugs can itself cause both lung as well as cardiac toxicity. Now, physical examination should pay attention to lymph node palpation at peripherally accessible sites as well as splenic and liver size. Then the lab evaluation of these patients should include, firstly, complete blood count with differential counts, ESR, serum albumin, HIV, hepatitis B antigen, etc. These should be done. The diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma is finally established by review of an adequate specimen by an expert hematopathologist. Now, Hodgkin's lymphoma is a tumor which is characterized by rare neoplastic cells of B cell origin, which are termed as Reed-Sternberg cells. Along with this, we have already discussed, there is a polyclonal inflammatory infiltrate, which is probably a reaction to cytokines which are produced by these tumor cells. Now, what can be the differential diagnosis of a lymph node biopsy which is suspicious for Hodgkin's lymphoma? These include other inflammatory processes, mononucleosis, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, phenytoin-induced adenopathy, or non-lymphomatous malignancies which are spreaded to the lymph node regions. Since we are considering the biopsy findings in this slide, let's here only discuss the various variants of Reed-Sternberg cells. So first one is classical Reed-Sternberg cell. These are large cells with 20 to 16 micron diameter, have abundant eosinophilic cytoplasm. The nucleus are typically two large nucleus which are mirror image to each other. This has a prominent eosinophilic nucleolus surrounded by a halo. So this is classical Reed-Sternberg cell, and it is seen in mixed cellularity variant of classic Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then we have mononuclear variant, which is also known as Hodgkin cell. It has a single large round nucleus with a large central nucleolus, and it can be seen in any type of classic Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then we have lymphohistiocytic variant. It has abundant pale cytoplasm with a popcorn shaped nucleus. So it is also known as popcorn cell or lymphocyte predominant cell. Lymphocyte predominant cell, as this cell is characteristic of nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma. Then we have pleomorphic Reed-Sternberg cell. It has highly pleomorphic cell with large bizarre hyperchromatic nucleus. It is common in lymphocyte depleted subtype of classic Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lechner cell has abundant lightly acidophilic or water clear cytoplasm, and it is characteristic of nodular sclerosis subtype. Finally, there is mummified cell, which has dark eosinophilic cytoplasm with pycnotic nucleus. It strongly indicates Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it is not diagnostic of this tumor. So again, these are the biopsy findings. First, we have classic Reed-Sternberg cell, which is common in mixed cellularity type. So this has two identical nucleus which are mirror image to each other. Lechner cell, which is common in nodular sclerosis subtype. And then this is popcorn cell, which is seen in nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, after we have seen the biopsy findings, it is important to note that PET scan or CT scan is used for staging and is more accurate than bone marrow biopsy for evaluation of bone marrow involvement. Why? Because the involvement of bone marrow in classical Hodgkin's lymphoma tends to be patchy, and this can potentially be missed on unilateral bone marrow biopsy. Therefore, this PET scan or CT scan is better for staging as well as in identifying the involvement of bone marrow. But for making definitive diagnosis, we go for biopsy. Now, staging of classical Hodgkin lymphoma is anatomically based given the propensity of the disease to march from one lymph node group to the next group, which is often contiguous to the first lymph node group. Staging is important for selecting therapy of appropriate intensity, but usually the outcome of optimal therapy for all the stages, be it early stage or advanced stage, is usually excellent. Now, staging of this condition, that is Hodgkin's lymphoma, is done using Ann Arbor staging system. Ann Arbor staging system. So first let's see what is the Ann Arbor staging system. So in this, stage 1 is characterized by involvement of single lymph node region or lymphoid structure like spleen, thymus or Waldeur's ring. Stage 2 is characterized by more than equal to 2 lymph node regions but on the same side of diaphragm. Stage 3 has involvement of lymph node regions or lymphoid structures. Now these are on both the sides of diaphragm. So stage 3-1 has subdiaphragmatic involvement limited to spleen, splenic hilar lymph nodes, celiac nodes or portal nodes, and stage 3-2 has subdiaphragmatic involvement which include para-aortic, iliac or mesenteric nodes plus structures which are already involved in stage 3-1. Stage 4 has involvement of extranodal sites beyond that designated as E. So what is E? E is localized solitary involvement of extra lymphatic tissue excluding liver and bone marrow. So in stage 4 there is involvement of extranodal sites beyond that designated as E. So it includes more than one extranodal deposit at any location or any involvement of liver or bone marrow. Now A means no symptoms and B means presence of B symptoms. So we have already discussed that B symptoms include unexplained weight loss of more than 10% during the 6 months before staging, unexplained persistent or recurrent fever with temperatures more than 38 degrees centigrade during the previous month, and recurrent drenching night sweats during the previous month. So with the help of figure, let's see what are the various stages. So in stage 1, there is localized disease, single lymph node region or single organ involvement is there. In stage 2, there is 2 or more lymph node regions but on the same side of diaphragm. In stage 3, 2 or more lymph node regions. Now these have involved both the sides of diaphragm, that is above as well as below. And stage 4 is widespread disease, multiple organ involvement with or without lymph node involvement. So involvement of liver as well as bone marrow is included in stage 4 disease. So this staging system also helps in the patient stratification. So what is the early stage disease? It is stage 1 or stage 2, and it is associated with better prognosis. Early stage disease is associated with better prognosis. Now this early stage disease can further be divided into favorable or unfavorable based on other factors. So what are these other factors? These include whether or not bulky disease is present, number of lymph node areas which are involved, age of the patient, and finally ESR. So ESR more than 30 with presence of B symptoms and more than 50 with absence of B symptoms make it unfavorable. Now advanced stage disease is stage 3 or 4 in which prognosis depends on International Prognostic Score IPS. So 1 point is given each to male sex, older age more than 45 years, stage 4 disease, serum albumin less than 4 gram per deciliter, hemoglobin less than 10.5 gram per deciliter, WBC more than 15,000, lymphocyte count less than 600 per microliter, and or less than 8% of the WBC count. So 1 point is given to each of these entity. Now based on this, 5-year progression-free survival is calculated. So if no risk factor is identified, this 5-year progression-free survival is around 88%. But if more than equal to 4 factors are present, this 5-year progression-free survival decreases to 62%. But very few patients have multiple risk factors out of these. So this was all about the approach to the patient, in which first we have discussed the presentation, history taking, physical examination, and lab evaluation, which included CBC with differential count, serum albumin, HIV, etc. Then what is the role of biopsy, and finally staging with the help of PET scan or CT scan. So this is Ann Arbor staging system. Now we will go to the treatment part of this condition. So the overwhelming majority of patients with Hodgkin lymphoma will be cured with either chemotherapy alone, especially in advanced stage disease, as these patients do not benefit from adding radiation treatment. These do not benefit from radiation therapy. So these patients can be treated with chemotherapy alone in advanced stage disease, or with a combination of chemotherapy and radiotherapy, especially in the early stage of disease. Now this combination of chemotherapy along with radiotherapy used in early stage disease is associated with decreased risk of disease relapse. But at the same time, there is increased risk of late toxicity, which includes secondary malignancies, thyroid disease, premature cardiovascular diseases, as well as risk of stroke. Now this results in minimal or no improvement in the overall long-term survival of these patients. And much of this risk can be attributed to the addition of radiation therapy. Thus, investigation into treatment of early stage disease at present is aimed at trying to maximize the treatment outcome without using any radiotherapy. So let's first start with the treatment of early stage disease. So the most common chemotherapeutic regimen used in this early stage disease is ABVD regimen. So ABVD stands for adriamycin, also known as doxorubicin, bleomycin, vinblastine, and dacarbazine. Now this regimen is given every other week, which each cycle including 2 treatments. Now in patients with low risk or which is known as favorable disease, 4 to 6 cycles of ABVD alone without radiation treatment leads to 5-year progression-free survival of around 90% and 5-year overall survival of around 99%. Now this ABVD alone is associated with slight increased risk of relapse when we compare it to abbreviated chemotherapy regimen. So in this abbreviated chemotherapy, ABVD 4 cycles are followed by involved field radiation of 30 Gay. So as we have discussed, there is slight increased risk of relapse with ABVD alone as compared to the abbreviated chemotherapy, but there is no difference in overall survival owing to excellent salvage strategies if Hodgkin's lymphoma relapses at all in the ABVD treatment alone. Now we have very abbreviated chemotherapy, which includes 2 cycles of ABVD followed by very low dose radiation of 20 Gray. Now long-term follow-up of this regimen is not yet available and this is not commonly used. Now use of early PET scan or CT scan aids in duration and extent of therapy. So this helps in selection of duration and extent of therapy. For example, in one study, ABVD was given only for 3 cycles, which was followed by PET scan, which came out to be negative. Now after this, no further chemotherapy was given and these patients showed excellent outcomes even with 3 cycles of ABVD. So this is the reason why early PET scan and CT scan can aid in duration and the extent of therapy. So this was the treatment of favorable disease in early stage disease. Now let's see the unfavorable disease. So omission of radiotherapy following chemotherapy in unfavorable disease is often associated with increased risk of relapse compared to favorable risk disease. But again, the overall survival in these patients is also the same. Overall survival even after relapse is same because we have good salvage treatment after the relapse of this condition. Now the therapy depends on extent of radiation field and as well as unfavorable risk factors. So if we have patient with non-bulky disease, chemotherapy alone can be used. But if the disease is bulky, we use combined therapy, combined chemoradiation therapy. So for bulky disease, we can go for ABVD 4 cycles followed by involved field radiotherapy, and for non-bulky disease, we can go only for ABVD but for 6 cycles. Now there are certain alternative chemotherapy regimens which have been developed like Stanford 5 regimen and escalated BCOP regimen. Now this escalated BCOP regimen includes bleomycin, etoposide, doxorubicin, cyclophosphamide, vincristine, procarbazine and prednisolone. But neither of these regimens has resulted in improved outcomes in patients with early disease, and these can be considered only in advanced disease and sometimes in relapsed disease. But there is no added advantage of these regimens as compared to the ABVD regimen. Now let's come to the treatment of advanced stage disease. Firstly, as we have already discussed, there is no benefit of adding radiotherapy and these patients should be treated with chemotherapy alone. Now the most common regimen again is ABVD, but now for 6 cycles. Again, Stanford 5 and escalated BCOP regimen have been evaluated in advanced stage disease and these are not associated with an improvement in overall survival, but at the same time these are associated with increased toxicity. Therefore, these Stanford 5 and escalated BCOP regimen are not commonly used. Now less than 10% of the patients do not achieve complete remission with the chemotherapy alone, and these may benefit from addition of involved field radiotherapy. So even in advanced disease, 10% of the patients need addition of radiation therapy. Now newer drugs have been developed specially for patients with relapsed disease. These drugs include brentuximab vedotin, which is a antibody drug conjugate. So it has a CD30 antibody which is conjugated to microtubule inhibitor, which is monomethyl auristatin E, known as MMAE. Now this drug has been combined with doxorubicin, bleomycin, dacarbazine in early phase studies for advanced stage Hodgkin lymphoma, and it has shown favorable efficacy compared to the historical controls. Other than these, we also have newer drugs which target PD-1, PD-L1 axis, and these include pembrolizumab and nivolumab. These drugs have very high response rates and durable responses, and these are now being tested in conjugation with chemotherapy, both as salvage treatment for relapsed disease as well as for patients who are previously untreated. Now coming on to the treatment of relapsed disease. So patients who relapse after primary therapy of Hodgkin's lymphoma can frequently still be cured. Now patients who relapse after an effective chemotherapy regimen are usually not curable with standard dose chemotherapy. So in these patients, alternative salvage chemotherapy administered at standard doses then is given in order to document sensitivity to chemotherapy and to achieve maximum reduction of tumor mass. Salvage chemotherapy regimens include ICE regimen, which includes ifosfamide, carboplatin, etoposide, GND regimen, gemcitabine, vinorelbine, doxorubicin, or brentuximab along with chemotherapy or nivolumab have also been tested. Now for early stage disease which has relapsed after the standard chemotherapy and then is not responding to the salvage chemotherapy. So for these patients, we have to add radiation therapy. And for advanced stage disease which has relapsed after the standard chemo, which is then not responding to the salvage chemo, can be given brentuximab vedotin. Now checkpoint inhibitors like nivolumab and pembrolizumab can also be used in relapsed disease. Now these drugs restores Reed-Steinberg cells sensitivity to the chemotherapy by unknown mechanisms. For patients who respond to salvage chemotherapy completely or nearly so, autologous stem cell transplantation can then be done and it can cure about 50% of the patients. Finally, anti-CD30 chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, which is CAR T cell therapy, has also been tested in multiple relapsed classical Hodgkin's lymphoma with promising early results. Now we also have two other options which may be useful in setting of disease relapse. So we can use alkylating agent based chemotherapy, which includes chlorambucil, vincristine, prednisolone and procarbazine. So this can be used for patients who are resistant to ABVD. So the patients who are resistant to ABVD, these can be given alkylating agent based chemotherapy. Another option for patients who relapse following bone marrow transplant. So the patients who have relapsed following bone marrow transplant, what we can give? We can give weekly low dose single agent, that is vinblastine. So after we have discussed the treatment part, let's see the survivorship of these patients. So because of very high cure rate in patients with Hodgkin lymphoma, long-term complications have become a major focus of clinical research. Now the most serious late side effect includes second malignancies and cardiac injury. So the risk of development of acute leukemias is in the first 10 years after treatment with combination chemotherapy regimens that contain alkylating agent along with radiation therapy. Now development of leukemia is greater with use of MOP or BCOP like regimens as compared to ABVD regimen. Now it is also associated with the increased number of exposures to the potentially leukemogenic agents. Now, age of patient also plays a role, with age more than 60 years having high risk of development of these leukemias. Now, development of carcinomas as a complication of Hodgkin lymphoma is also a major problem, and it usually occurs after more than equal to 10 years of therapy, and it is associated with use of radiotherapy. So use of thoracic radiotherapy can lead to development of breast cancer in females, and this is the reason screening mammograms should be started after 5 to 10 years after completing the treatment. Also, these patients must be discouraged from smoking. Now, cervical radiation can increase carotid atherosclerosis, which can itself increase the risk of stroke as well as thyroid disease, including the malignancies. Late side effects in the patients who receive thoracic radiotherapy include hypothyroidism and Lermit syndrome, which can occur in 15% of the patients. On the other hand, the patients who receive alkylating agents commonly become infertile, which is more common in males as compared to females. Among females, infertility is common in older females as compared to young, which can regain their fertility. Now, cardiac injury is also a long-term complication which can develop due to mediastinal radiotherapy, which increases the risk of coronary artery disease. Therefore, these patients should definitely be discouraged from smoking. So with this, we have completed the discussion on classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now let's see a last slide on discussion of nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin lymphoma. So it is now recognized as entity which is different from classical Hodgkin lymphoma. This is an unusual clinical entity and represents less than 5% of the cases of Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, NLPHL has a number of characteristics that suggest that it is related to non-Hodgkin lymphoma more than classical Hodgkin lymphoma. So the characteristic cells we have already discussed. These are lymphocytic, histiocytic cell or popcorn cell, which are clonal proliferation of B cell. These have positive B cell markers in contrast to the Reed-Sternberg cells. So these B cell markers include CD45, CD79A, 20, 19, BCL2, and these do not express CD30 and 15, which are being expressed on Reed-Sternberg cells. Now this lymphoma tends to have a chronic relapsing course, and sometimes it can transform to diffuse large B cell lymphoma, including a specific subtype which is known as T cell or histiocyte rich B cell lymphoma. Now 75% of the patients are males, and it is more common in males. Similar to classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, this disease also has two peaks, but the age of peaks is different. First peak is in the children and second peak is in the adult between 30 to 40 years of age group. In contrast to classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, B symptoms are uncommon and majority of patients are in early stage, that is stage 1 or 2 of disease, that is 75% of the patients, and only 25% patients are in advanced stage disease at the time of diagnosis. Now, when we consider the treatment, the patient with early stage should be treated with definitive radiotherapy similar to classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, and this is associated with 15-year non-relapse survival rate of 82%. On the other hand, treatment of advanced stage is controversial. So basically, these advanced stage patients require close follow-up. But for patients who are symptomatic and require chemotherapy, these can be treated with ABVD regimen similar to classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, or R-CHOP regimen, which is used for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as this tumor is more related to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So this is all about the discussion. This lecture is now complete, and I hope you are liking these lectures. kindly hit the like and subscribe button and share these lectures with your friends. Thank you so much.